Okay, there we go.
All right.
And I'll bring us. So we're recording the rest of the show later today.
Okay.
We're, for our purposes, we'll pretend that we've done the first two parts of the show.
Okay. Sounds good.
Um, so I'll bring us back in five, four, three, two, one. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the final part of the episode. Typically, this is where I will have my segment, but we're going to mix it up today, do something a little different. Minnesota United, expansion MLS team in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, I guess, eventually. Started their season Friday night, falling 5-1 to the Timbers in Portland. Still an exciting time to be a soccer fan in the Midwest, and we have with us today David Zeller of the Minnesota United supporters group Dark Clouds. David, thanks for joining the show.
Andrew, thanks for having me.
So, just going to start a little bit about who you are, what you do with the group. I'm guessing not a lot of our followers have heard of your group, although as best I understand it, you guys are pretty big.
Yeah, we are. This year, we're going to be probably by the end of the year over 1,000 members of the Dark Clouds. I've been a Dark Cloud for 5 years now, and am the chair of the membership committee, which is sort of works on inclusion and diversity, but also member benefits and things like that. So that's I run that committee. I got a couple of probably about 7 people on that committee, and we sort of help do a lot of the stuff. And there's lots of different committees in the Dark Clouds, including things like TIFO committee. We have communications and all that, all that fun stuff like an organization runs. That's how we got to do it. And it's all volunteer based.
So how long have you guys been around? You predated by a little while the MLS operation, right?
By a lot, actually. I believe this is the 13th or 14th year of the Dark Clouds as an entity. They started the name came from when we were back when Minnesota was the Thunder, back in the old I'm not forgetting the old USL soccer league back in the 90s, and the motto was anywhere the Thunder go, Dark Clouds follow. As we travel and support our team, and been doing that for a long time. We predate so it started with the Thunder back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then we just sort of traveled with when the Thunder folded and became the Stars. And then when this, McGuire and his folks, his group bought the team, changed the name to United, Dark Clouds just stuck around, So
it has been quite a journey then for you guys, from all the various underworlds of U.S. soccer to MLS. Can
Absolutely.
you talk a little bit about that, what it's like on that journey?
Yeah, so, when there was talk about Minnesota moving to MLS, or MLS coming to Minnesota, there's obviously, I don't know how familiar listeners are, but there was just basically 2 competing bids from Minnesota groups. There was the one with Minnesota United sponsored with Dr. McGuire, that was basically going to move the team that was in the NASL up to MLS. And then the Vikings, Ziggy Wilf and those guys actually put together a bid too, to basically move a brand new soccer team into the U.S. Bank Stadium. They had sort of, it's the People's Stadium, as people like to call it, particularly the Wilfs and Governor Dayton. And so they had retrofitted it for soccer very haphazardly and slapdash. So the Dark Clouds have been in the mix in terms of sort of supporting, the Wilfs and the team that, he saved our team basically. Another one of our models is the team that nobody wanted. He saved our team, and we sort of supported him, not officially, but certainly there was a lot of us that were a lot more vocal about moving with the current Minnesota United team. So it's been different because we're not a brand new expansion team like Orlando or New York City, Orlando wasn't either. Orlando was a pre-established team, but like Atlanta or New York City FC, where they need to generate the supporters groups, and so a lot of that is, and those are sort of everything is obviously very much supporter run. So we work with the front office. Front office asks us for input on things, but we are strictly and solely independent of the front office. we do stuff the front office doesn't always like, and we think that's good, and that's been part of our journey, part of our struggle with that too. Is that there's obviously now in MLS there's a lot more rules and regulations, but there's also an opportunity for us to grow. I mean, last night, so we host our watch parties at the Nomad World Pub on the West Bank in Minneapolis, and typically on the biggest day we ever had was probably about 150 people in there when we played Ottawa in the semifinals a couple years ago. There were over 500 people at the Nomad on Friday night, and I didn't recognize 90% of the people. And normally when we go to a dark cloud thing, I know 95% of the people, and that's really cool. And that's been a really interesting experience for us. And there's a lot of growth and learning that still has to be done. So,
have you noticed? And do you think you'll continue to notice kind of that similar growth, that there are more and more people in the Twin Cities who are thinking about soccer now, that are thinking about Minnesota United when maybe they were focusing on European soccer before?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're seeing it. I literally run into people all the time who know that I like soccer and like, oh yeah, I bought season tickets. I'm like, great. Well, how many games did you come out to last year out in Blaine? They're like, oh, no, none. I've never seen a professional soccer game before, but they bought season tickets to Minnesota United. I think that speaks to what the club is doing in terms of their brand. There's been some we call it hashtag panic up here about the lack of sort of advertising and stuff, but the team itself has established a really good identity, and it's something that people will. I think people are in this market, especially, have been sort of jonesing for really good soccer, and the MLS isn't the best soccer in the world. I watched that Minnesota United game, and then I watched Liverpool play Arsenal yesterday, and it's like night and day how different the games are. But I think it's going to be like we've already seen an influx, and now that we actually start playing games and people start seeing highlights, they're going to see videos of us in the supporter section at TCF Bank going wild, and they're going to be like, I want to be a part of that. And so that's a whole big thing too, is we need to start building up that infrastructure so that we can bring more people into the fold of soccer, and especially particularly in supporter section soccer fans.
And one thing that's exciting to me, I'm a Vancouver Whitecaps fan, so not Midwest, but this is obviously a Madison, Wisconsin-based podcast. And
okay.
The potential, I think, for Minnesota United to kind of become a team that reaches out into the Dakotas and parts of Wisconsin and parts of Iowa, that there was this huge void for, almost 1,000 miles without an MLS team between Chicago and Denver. Mm-hmm. That's now kind of filled, and a potential for Minnesota. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, they're doing a lot of work to build the academy and build a youth presence in the region as well. So personally, I'm kind of excited at the notion of Minnesota United becoming almost a regional player.
I think that's the goal. Ultimately, long term for the team is that they want to be the team that if you are not a Chicago Fire fan, I mean, a lot of people up here are I don't know many people who supported the Chicago Fire, honestly, but a lot of people up here, myself included. When I watched MLS, I actually have a Sporting KC jersey, and like I've gone down to Kansas City. I went down for the MLS Cup a few years ago at the field down there, and I can't remember, it's like Mercy Children's Park now or whatever. It wasn't that before. So I think actually a lot of people up here supported Kansas City. So it's interesting. I'm glad that we're in the same conference as them. But I think you're right. The team's doing something a little different with the academy. There is. So Minnesota's weird because we have the Shattuck St. Mary's is sort of does this for other sports as well as soccer, but mostly like hockey. There's a lot of hockey players that come from the region and come to Shattuck's and play hockey and then go on to play either juniors or college hockey. There's the Minnesota Thunder Academy is an existing academy that's been around for a long time here, and so the politics of Minnesota United did not want to just sort of pick that academy up and just poach everybody. So they're starting actually a little bit younger than most academies start. They're starting the 13, 14-year-old level, which is good. It'll help identify players early on, but also it's going to put them, a couple years behind everybody else in terms of when they can actually start getting and potentially seeing some fruits of that labor. So
that's interesting. And so kind of shifting to the current squad, it was a tough result Friday, but this is definitely this. I mean, we touched on this a little bit. This seems to be an organization taking a long play, waiting for that stadium to be built, waiting for the academy to kind of start bearing fruit. Are you optimistic for this season? I know. I mean, hearing people talk, they talk about Minnesota United potentially being like the worst MLS side ever, which seems to be hyperbolic and too far to me.
I mean, Chivas USA. Let's just say that. So,
Yeah.
I am. I mean, yeah. I guess the optimism is tempered somewhat in that it's going to be there's going to be rough stretches like that game yesterday, or Friday. That really should have probably been a 3-1 score, and then obviously everything broke down at the very end. But I think Minnesota's an interesting spot because obviously the stadium is not going to be open for probably till 2019. So it's kind of like a soft open. It's not going to feel like ours until we're in the midway in the stadium there. I mean, we're still sort of interlopers at TCF, and we can't do especially as a supporters group some of the stuff that we are going to want to do in terms of like TIFO and all that stuff because there's rules with the university, so it's not going to really feel like it's ours. But at the same time, I was here when this team almost folded, like when they went to the finals, the NASL finals, and lost, and we didn't know if we were going to have a team the next year. Like we had won the year before. Celebrated. We had, made it to the finals again as the 6th seed, and lost in heartbreaking fashion. And so we weren't sure if we were actually going to be a team, have a team. So I was at the Nomad. I was upstairs watching with, like I said, 500 of my closest friends, people I had no idea who they were. And I told my wife, I was like, I might start tearing up when I see them walk out of the pitch and like kick the ball for the first time. And I did. I teared up a little bit. So I mean, in terms of results, I am not very optimistic in the team, but I think this is something, I mean, MLS is a really hard place to play, especially in terms of travel and all that. So I think we can steal 7 or 8 wins easily. I don't think we'll be the worst team in the league, if that's optimistic. I think that is reserved for the San Jose Earthquakes, but that's just me. So I mean, in terms of that, I mean, optimistic but basically for me, success this year would this team growing as a team, but also the front office, building up a base of support in the community and getting more people involved and interested in soccer here. So,
and I mean, you certainly have, some exciting players to come watch to get excitement. I mean, Christian Ramirez and Miguel Ibarra were holdovers from the NASL. I mean, Christian Ramirez made a very good account of himself on Friday night.
Yes, he did.
I mean, it seems to me there's plenty of reason to go out to TCF Bank Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have, it's going to be great because not only do we have these players that are ours, that we know, we brought in pieces like Calvo and Demidov, I think are going to be really, really good, and it will be like great pieces and parts of the community here. But the other thing, the other draw too with soccer is it's kind of like the NBA, like you may have a crappy NBA team, but LeBron's going to come to town once a year. We're going to get to see Kaká potentially, hopefully, and national team players. So I mean, even if you're not a huge fan of soccer, maybe support the U.S. national team or whatever. We're going to have players coming through town who are those like Michael Bradleys and all that. So I think that's kind of another selling point. I mean, you don't want to say, oh hey, our team's crap, but look at all these great players that are going to be here. But at the same time, I think it'll be an opportunity for us to continue to grow. And like I said, as the Dark Clouds, as a supporters group, our goal is to make it a big party, a raucous party that people want to come back to. And the club understands that, they realize that, and they enable us to do the things that we want to do. But also, like, we have a mission of making it a party and getting more people into the section and more people into the stadium. So,
well, I was going to say, definitely atmosphere is a big draw for something like soccer, and I would think you guys will be a draw at some point.
Yeah, it is. Between us and True North Elite, who is the other sort of the newer supporters group, we are loud, we are fun, and we have people who come to games and used to come out to Blaine. They would sit on the other side of the stands away from us and just watch us sing and dance and jump around and scream and all that stuff 1 week, and then the next week they'd be over in our section singing and doing all that stuff with us. So, and you're right. I mean, definitely with soccer, it's great because it's family friendly. It's a really, you're in and out of there in 2 hours. But it's also it's very, and even the supporters groups are also friendly as well. I mean, there is occasional cursing and all that, but it's we're very progressive minded individuals, and I think a progressively minded organization that understands that without the little kids coming around, like we don't exist in 10, 15 years. So it's very important to us to create that really great atmosphere, but also to to make sure that it's engaging for everybody and anybody who wants to participate.
So what would you say, and I won't ask you to speak on behalf of Dark Clouds, but from your perspective, what is the hardest part about being a supporters group, especially now that you guys have an expansion team or are an expansion side?
Yeah. I mean, I think the hardest part for me so far, and just in my capacity, like in the membership committee, like really we just, like we're sort of behind the 8 ball. We just formed that committee maybe like six weeks ago, something like that. Something we've been kicking around for a while, but we want to make sure the hardest part for me is going to be finding the people and getting to where they're at and getting them more engaged in the organization. Obviously, people see us and they see that we're having a great time. They don't necessarily understand all of the work that goes into making this stuff happen, and that we're all volunteers. No one is paid to do any of this stuff. It's all we're doing it on our own time. After work, I'm up till probably 2:00 in the morning sending out emails to businesses and stuff. And so I think that is going to be that's the thing that I personally struggle with, and I think our organization tends to struggle with as well. Is just we've seen a huge uptick in the number of members that we have, and so what our previous members expected of us and what we were able to deliver, the expectations need to change. And we need to sort of reset those expectations for not only for our older members, people who've been around since the start, but also for people who are just becoming Dark Clouds this year. There needs to be realistic expectations and goals for us to hit. And so, yeah, I mean, the thing I've struggled with the most is trying to figure out where all these people are and get them engaged with the organization. So.
And then, what is the coolest part about? Kind of the flip side of the same question.
Yeah. I mean, the coolest part is just the sheer numbers. To me, honestly, like I joined the Dark Clouds. We probably had about 50 card carrying members of the Dark Clouds, and to see, I was talking with some of the board members a couple nights ago at the watch party, and there was over almost 1,000 people have signed up to become members of the Dark Clouds. So. That's in literally like 4 years. That's like exponential growth. And the supporter stand at the Midway Stadium will hold about 3,000 people. So we're going to have upwards of 3,000 supporters when in 2019, when in 2009 we had maybe 50. That's huge and that's amazing. And that is like watching that, going to the watch party. I mean, I got there like an hour and a half early and the bar was already packed. Which never happened before, So that's really cool. And then I think people will see in the stadium on Sunday when we play Atlanta here, our first home match in MLS, that's going to be a really kick-ass, awesome time. So
I think also, I mean, you guys have to be looking forward to that new stadium. The renderings look beautiful. I don't know if
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
that's definitely the front office. That's definitely the team doing all that. We do have like an architect who works for a firm that does stadium building. So he's given us. If you go to there's a site based in Minnesota, but it covers all of soccer. It's 55.1. It's a really good soccer site. Plug to those guys. Nothing to do with them, but he's actually written some pieces about the safe standing that's going to be there. That's one thing that when the front office came to us with like questions about what we would like to see and all that, the first thing we said was safe standing. if we have that, then everything else is just gravy. So that's gonna be really cool, really interesting, one of a kind stadiums, not only here in the U.S. but also in the country. So it's very cool, and we've taken to calling it Cloud City because it kind of looks like Cloud City from Empire Strikes Back. So.
Oh, and one last question.
Yep.
In 5 years, where do you see you guys? In 5 years, also, where do you see that team on the pitch?
In 5 years, the Dark Clouds will be. We're not technically a nonprofit right now. That's something that's going to be in the works. In 5 years, I see the Dark Clouds being a nonprofit with an actual paid staff, which would be really cool because it would take a lot of the work that I'm doing off of my chest. And then I think. I mean, the sky's the limit, I think, in terms of what our organization is willing to do and can do. We have people who are very passionate about soccer who live here and care about this game, care about everything that's going on here. So I think the sky's the limit for the Dark Clouds. In terms of the team, 5 years, I mean, I think we should be a consistent contender for the MLS Cup in 5 years. I think it might take a couple years for us to sort of get our bearings. But in 5 years, I don't see why we can't be a realistic title contender, particularly if the team continues to do what they're doing, being smart with the money that they're spending, but then also taking the time when they have the opportunity to make some splashy moves, which I've given the team every benefit of the doubt. They did that. They kind of splashed the cash in NASL, and they're taking their time here, but making some good solid moves forward with the system that they want to play. And I think too with the stadium opening up in a couple years, I think we'll start seeing U.S. women's men's and women's national team matches here. Pretty important matches. I mean, imagine Mexico coming to Minnesota in March to play a match that had World Cup qualification ramifications. It would be really, really cool.
Well, to our Minnesota-based listeners, check these guys out. Check out Minnesota United next Sunday against Atlanta at home. David, where can they find you personally on the interwebs, and then where can they find Dark Clouds?
Yeah, so they can find me at Texas Zeller. It's Texas like the state, Zeller. That's my personal Twitter. I actually also host a podcast, Minnesota United specific podcast. It's called The Daves I Know. You can find that at davesiknow.com and most of your podcast apps. And then the Minnesota Dark Clouds, pretty much the easiest way and where we have the most engaged is on Twitter, and that's at MN Dark Clouds. And if you ever want to come to a game, we can go to the website dark-clouds.com. We do have eventually we'll have all of the away games that we'll have tickets on sale for. So if you ever want to come road trip down to Kansas City with us or meet us up in Chicago when we play there in August, that's the best way to go get tickets to hang out in the Dark Cloud section.
Awesome stuff. Exciting times in the Twin Cities. Well, that is all we have for the show this week. Check us out on iTunes, on Twitter at point2 with the numeral 2 spot, and give us a follow. So until the midweek episode, this is Andrew Ball on behalf of Point to the Spot signing off.